Hello, I'm Ray, and I want to talk about this Mushroom Monarch's dialogue. Pale world, what good to foresee a demise unavoidable? Well, alright, foresee a demise unavoidable. Does this mean he predicted the infection? If so, how did he predict the wrath of a forgotten idol? A common interpretation of this is to say the worm has future sight, an ability that is commonly associated with monarchs, and it would explain this dialogue, to be able to foresee the infection, and possibly part of why the mushrooms allied with him in the first place would be his ability to foresee the future. However, there's a problem with this theory, and that is the fact we play as two separate half-worms, neither of which have foresight, or, well, there is a very foresight-like ability they possess called respawning. Whenever they die, they leave a regret in the place where they died. In fact, I'll pull up the entry. Echo of a previous life. Defeat it to retake its power and become whole. Each of us leaves an imprint of something when we die, a stain on the world. So, I think this means that they did die. Canonically, they died. However, they're still alive and no one refers to their death. So they didn't actually respawn. They remember dying there. They regret taking a decision that led to their death. And now, as a ghost describes, you kill your regret and try again. Doesn't that sound like a form of foresight? Being able to foresee a regret and being able to go back and kill it at its source. We can even extrapolate how this ability works in some of its details, because in multiple cutscenes, in fact, I can show you the cutscene. Hello, I'm here, and this is the trigger for the cutscene I was talking about. You'll notice that I am forced to save when I'm knocked unconscious here. And save. This tells us a lot, because clearly we were forced to save because we were knocked unconscious, and this is consistent with the caging experienced by Hornet. This is consistent with the binding events, since she literally goes unconscious when gaining a new ability. And this is just consistent with sitting on a bench, since, as far as I can tell, it's as close as they get to going to sleep. Which explains why this save feature really didn't help him. I think he could only save or predict the future, what, a day beforehand? Which is helpful when you're going to war, however, is a little more morbid if you try to use it to rule the day-to-day activities of your kingdom. The next section of this video will be about the implications, some of which definitely fate's worse than death. A few examples of them not being the best fates: to forever wake up in the past before you died, is some of the same problems found in Rainworld, but a good example would be the Pale King, forever rotting away from timeline to timeline in his palace warped by grief. On a lighter note, the Pit of Vessels is still alive, just all separated in separate timelines, each one a separate copy of Hollow Knight. In other news, the endings, which lead to Ghost's death, which is arguably none of them, wouldn't be canon, but also are canon, which makes you question Steel's soul mode. Because in Steel's soul, you can't respawn. It's depicted as a worm being brave. Is that because it's a worm no longer protected by their foresight? They've done all of their training in the world, and now it's time to act? That could be a potential explanation, and why both Ghost and Hornet have it, and why it's not called something separate, because it's the same thing, from the same species and the same ability of worms. Definitely puts many of the fights in this game into a different perspective, because none of them were fair. And it also recontextualizes a line from Mr. Mushroom where he says all the worms have died. No, all the worms are still alive, they're just not alive in this timeline. Besides, he's wrong anyway, there's multiple half-worms alive, just ask Hornet. Well, thank you for listening to my ramblings. Bye.